Germany can be a dream to live in. We have lively festivals, thousands of castles waiting to be discovered, incredible history, delicious food, spectacular scenery, and landscapes. But in this seemingly idyllic country, is everything perfect?
Hey guys, and welcome back to our channel. I am Donnie.
And I'm Aubrey.
And we are two Americans currently living in Germany and sharing all of our travels and experiences living in Europe here on our channel. So if you are new to our channel, and based on our channel data, I know that statistically about 80% of those watching are not subscribed, and this may be your first time to our channel. And I also know that statistically about 74% of you are also German, and based on the title of the video, you might be ready to come in and get upset at a couple of Amis hating on your country.
But that is not what we are doing, of course. And you can watch any number of our other videos and see how we're showing off this amazing country and all of the wonderful things about it. We love living here, but of course, there's no such thing as perfect, no matter how close a country gets. And we want to also show those sides as a bit of reflection, or just to be real with people that may be looking to move here. We also aren't oblivious to the fact that the US has its own set of issues and problems.
It comes as Florida and Texas report their deadliest days yet.
It's not every day that a zookeeper went to prison for murder for hire.
You can see a small but persistent crowd remains, capping off yet another night in the cycle of violence.
And I think that we should take a moment real quick to get our heads in the right place for this video and get ready for what we are about to say.
We have talked a lot in our other videos about driving in Germany, and for the most part, how much we agree with the fact that Germans are generally much better drivers than Americans. This makes us really enjoy driving in Germany. Well, that and things like no speed limit zones on the Autobahn. But one thing that does get on my nerves is when I pull up to a red light and turning right, and there's no traffic around, but I still cannot go ahead and turn right. If you don't know, in the US, you can turn right on a red light as long as you aren't getting in the way of traffic coming that has a green light. This is basically because you aren't crossing lanes of traffic, and it's keeping the flow of traffic and saves gas, etc.
And for those that say this is a dangerous maneuver, a study was submitted to the US Congress in 1995 showing that after an 11-year study, less than 0.2% of fatality accidents were caused by a right turn on red incident, and this number doesn't even actually confirm if the light was actually red. So it is believed that this number should actually be lower. However, about half of these fatalities involved either a bicyclist or a pedestrian. So potentially this could be slightly more dangerous in Europe, where there are significantly more bikers and pedestrians on the streets than in the US, but the number would seem that it would still be a very low risk.
One thing that really keeps a great flow of traffic and are much more efficient than normal intersections and are very common in Europe are roundabouts. But we just don't have very many at all in the US. But in the last decade, the number of roundabouts has doubled in the US as we start to move more in that direction. Until we have a lot more of those, we at least have right turn on red rules. At the end of the day, I just hate waiting at red lights if I feel like I really don't have to, just like at crosswalks, but that will be saved for another day and another video. This next one is a topic that we actually want to do a whole video about in the future, and is something that doesn't really affect us so much, but it affects the people that I love to work with. This is the accessibility for people with disabilities and handicaps in Germany. For people with disabilities, there are a lot of places that are not easily accessible or even impossible for them to access. For example, we see many buildings that may have a step up into it, which makes it very difficult for someone in a wheelchair, or buildings that just have staircases and no elevator elevator access, like the Volkshochschule that Donnie goes to.
Yeah, and for someone that doesn't know what a Volkshochschule is, it is basically an adult education center. In the US, people may have an interest in learning about something or a hobby, and they could attend a class at a community college. And a Volkshochschule is kind of the same thing, but they don't really award degrees. So with that, they have a lot of adults and a lot of times even elderly people taking classes there. And this is something I think about every day going up to my German class, because it is up 3 flights of stairs where there is no elevator access. So I see elderly people who take classes there as well, and they have to continuously stop to take breaks on their way up and try to catch their breath because it is so hard for some of them to climb those stairs.
In the US, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 that requires accessibility for people with disabilities into all public and private places that are open to the general public. So we're used to public places being much more accessible for all people. Now, we are definitely not saying this is a problem that Germany isn't working on. Germany ratified in 2009 the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and you can read the Federal Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs National Action Plan to implement the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and see that they are making strides to fix this. They had even set a goal for full accessibility by 2020, but it's 2020 and we can tell you from walking around Germany, full accessibility has not been reached. In a DW article, German politician Dr. Seifert, who does use a wheelchair, was quoted as saying, "The legal obligation is already there. We've had that for a long time. It's just delayed too often or avoided altogether. The problem is there's not enough monitoring by the government."
Of course, we get that a big problem in Germany is the number of buildings that are extremely old and were built hundreds, if not 1,000 years before any kind of laws pertaining to accessibility were written. And this could also be the case in the Northeast US, where there are more historical and old buildings, but I have honestly never been there, so I can only speak for our part of the US. But it is not a simple task to retrofit these types of buildings with ramps or elevators, and there are also tons of laws in place to protect what historical buildings look like that makes it even more of a complicated issue. But Aubrey is someone who has a passion for working with people with disabilities as a speech pathologist, and so it is on the forefront of our minds as we go around and see hindrances for people who may struggle with everyday tasks that we take for granted. The next thing that we hear a lot of people complain about when they move to Germany is, of course, the trash system. How complicated it is, how confusing it is, how much work it can be separating into all the different bins. But honestly, we feel like once we started getting used to how to separate the trash and follow the 33-page rule book about trash regulations in our area, it really isn't that bad or hard. But what we still haven't gotten used to is keeping a bio trash can. Not problems with separating the bio trash, but specifically having it and its smell.
Basically, this is the trash can that is reserved for biodegradable waste like leftover food scraps. In the US, we used to be able to just throw this down the drain in our sink because we have these terrifying things called garbage disposals in our sinks to chop up food wastes into tiny bits before getting washed away. Now we have a bin where we have all this rotting food sitting in that we have to regularly take out because the smell just turns so rotten. Even worse than that is the smell of the bio bin that we dump it in that sits outside in the hot sun. Our bio bins only get picked up every 2 weeks, giving it plenty of time for all of that rotten food to sit in the hot plastic bin, cooking under the hot summer sun, producing a smell that just burns in your nostrils.
Now, keeping a bit on the food theme, we love the restaurant experience in Germany for the most part. You sit down at the table you want, you aren't bothered by the wait staff, and you can just call them over whenever you want something. You can take things nice and slow and relaxed. But the one thing we still haven't gotten super enthusiastic about is the fact that we have to pay for the water and we don't get free refills. Now, we don't need the comments explaining why you pay for it because the wait staff in the US works for tips or because it is the restaurant's resources so they want you to pay for it, etc. Look, we get it. But just after growing up our whole lives being used to sucking down our drink and getting a big, full second, third, fourth glass, or if you are on a budget and you want a meal but also want to be healthy, you're rewarded by not having to pay for water. It is kind of like growing up your whole life being used to seeing people wearing socks and sandals and thinking that is completely normal. I just really don't like the feeling of rationing out my one drink through the entire meal because I am cheap and I don't want to have to pay for multiple rounds of drinks.
Getting set up here in Germany was fairly simple for us because we had some great people helping and walking us through the process. But there is something that is not unique to just foreigners trying to get set up in the German system. And Germans have also been known to talk about the same frustrations we have. And that is with the German bureaucracy. Germans love their bureaucracy. Well, they don't love it, but they sure have a lot of it. This also seems to come hand in hand with their love of using the mail service for getting business done. Our best example of the frustrating dependence on the muddying bureaucratic waters and relying on ancient ways is when we were trying to physically get my German driver's license card after I was approved already to have one. And I'll start first by explaining the American system that we went through to physically get my license. And that was this. 1, I went to the tag agency and gave them my documents. 2, they printed my license right there in the office. 3, they handed it to me and I left. That's it. Again, this is after all the tests and everything to just get the physical card. But for Germany, I had to send Donnie to pick it up for me because of their hours and my work schedule, but it went a little differently.
So the first step was we had to go to the government office, wait in an extremely long line, walk in and hand in her American license and a few other documents. We then were told we would be notified by mail when it was ready to come back and be picked up. This took several weeks before we received a letter in the mail saying to come in and pick it up. When I went to the office, I was told to go and talk to the woman at the desk and she would simply give it to me. Well, I walked up to the counter and she told me to wait. I waited as she sat and chatted with her coworker and caught up on their lives before she finally acknowledged me and told me I had to grab a ticket and wait in the waiting room. I had to wait for an hour and 15 minutes before finally being called, and when I went up, they pulled it out of a drawer and just handed it to me. Now I completely understand that different offices, different people, different situations will all be different. And this is our unique experience. But this is something that is not unique to this one government agency or this one task either. Everything we have to get done has very strict procedures, rules, customs, and courtesy that at first glance don't seem to make much sense. And in the end, they don't make much sense, and that's just the way things are done.
Again, these are just 5 things that bug us about Germany, and that is out of the millions of things we love about Germany. At the end of the day, Germany is an amazing place to live, and we are very fortunate to do so. We aren't gonna pretend like everything is perfect, but we really do love it here.
Thanks again for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, please hit that like and subscribe button, and we hope you stick around for our next video.
Choose!
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and for some that doesn't... Okay. And for someone that doesn't know what a Volkshochschule is, it is basically... As we go around and see hindrances Dr.
Seifert.
Seifert.
Basically, this is the trash can that was basically, this is the trash can. Now we have a bin. Now we have a bin.
Okay.
Yeah,
let's just both restart. I waited as she said. I waited. Okay, that's good.